Hello, girls. Welcome. Take a seat, make yourself comfortable. Those of you who are used to my meditations can lie on the mat and close your eyes as usual. This will help a lot to imagine the things that we will deal with today. In this talk, we are going to try to explain, at least in part, the structure and functioning of the psychic apparatus. We are going to define many sometimes diffuse concepts. What is the mind? What is this mysterious terrain about which there are still big questions? When we talk about mind, we are referring to a non-tangible, non-material structure, unlike the brain, or more holistically called the encephalon, which is material. Perhaps the physical seat of what we call the mind is the prefrontal cortex belonging to the frontal lobe and some annexes such as the limbic system, within which we count the hippocampus, the cerebral amygdala, and other areas. The mind would be a set of dispersed structures in the brain. However, for the purpose of understanding its functions, some imaginary format unrelated to its intricate physical form can be attributed to it. We will see it when analyzing Freud's models. One of the most famous theorists on the structure and functions of the psychic apparatus was the psychiatrist Sigmund Freud. Throughout his career, and within the framework of his psychoanalytic theory, Freud developed a theoretical framework that described the mind according to three models. Let's talk about the first model, called topographic. According to Freud, our mind has different elements and they each have their own functions. First up, we've got the conscious level. This is like the tip of the iceberg, or the first room one enters upon entering the mind. The place where we're aware of our thoughts, feelings, and experiences at any given moment. It's like the stuff that's right in front of our eyes. Then we have the preconscious level. Picture it as the backstage area of your mind, or a second room of the mind behind the main one. It holds information that's not currently in your conscious awareness, but it's easily accessible if you bring it to the forefront. It's like memories or thoughts that are just hanging out behind the curtains, ready to step onto the stage. Now, let's go deeper into the mysterious waters of the unconscious. This is the hidden part of our mind, like the depths of the ocean, as a third room behind the previous two. It contains desires, impulses, and memories that are repressed or not easily accessible to your conscious mind. It's like the buried treasure that shapes your thoughts and behaviors without you even realizing it. So, in a nutshell, the first model, called topographic, is all about these three levels: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. They represent different aspects of our mind and how information flows between them. It's like a front stage, a backstage, and the backyard of the backstage. This is just a basic overview, but it should give you a sense of Freud's first topography and how our mind works in his theory. Pretty fascinating stuff, right? A few years later, Freud expounded his second model, called structural. This one builds on the first and adds some new elements to the mix. So, picture it like an upgraded version of the mind structure. In the second model, Freud introduces three components that make up our personality: the id, the ego, and the superego. Think of them as three characters with their own roles and motivations. First up, we've got the id. This is like the wild and impulsive part of our mind. It's driven by basic instincts and desires, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. The id is like your inner child, always wanting immediate satisfaction and not caring about consequences. It is absolute permission in every aspect of life. Beautiful. But we know well that this is not good. Next, we have the superego. This is like the moral compass within us. The superego represents societal rules, cultural values, and our internalized sense of right and wrong. It's like the judge in our mind, evaluating our thoughts and actions based on moral standards. It is the I must do this. It is the duty. It is not bad in itself, nor is it a structure that should be abolished. To avoid its excesses, there is the ego. Last but not least, we've got the ego. This is the rational part of our mind that tries to balance the id's desires with the demands of the superego and the outside world. The ego is like the mediator, making decisions and finding realistic ways to fulfill our needs. It's the voice of reason, considering the long-term consequences of our actions. The balance that this structure achieves enables our mental and also physical health, but mainly the mental. So, in this second model, we have the id, the ego, and the superego working together, or sometimes against each other, to shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It's like a balancing act between our instinctual drives, rational thinking, and moral considerations. It turns out that each structure of the first model has its own structure of the second model. Thus, we have a conscious with his own ego and superego, and likewise the preconscious and the unconscious. However, the id is only possessed by the unconscious. A few years later, Freud would release his third and final model, the newest addition to his theory of the mind. This one expands on the second model and introduces a couple of fresh elements. In the third model, Freud introduces the concept of the broadened ego or the ego's extension. Think of it as an upgrade to the ego we discussed earlier. The broadened ego takes on additional functions and responsibilities. The broadened ego acts as a mediator between the demands of the id, the constraints of reality, and the moral considerations of the superego. It's like the CEO of our mind, coordinating and balancing all these different forces. Another key addition in the third model is the introduction of the ideal ego. This represents our aspirations, goals, and the idealized version of ourselves that we strive to become. It's like our personal vision of who we want to be. Very remarkable element to study in the feminization clinic. The ideal ego plays a role in shaping our sense of identity and influencing our behavior. It's like the motivational coach in our mind, inspiring us to work towards our goals and maintain a positive self-image. So, in this third model, we have the broadened ego, taking on a central role in managing the conflicts and demands within us, and the ideal ego, driving our aspirations and self-identity. Overall, Freud's third model adds more depth and complexity to his theory of the mind. It emphasizes the expanded functions of the ego and the importance of our idealized self in shaping our thoughts and actions. This was a review to our understanding of the mind's inner workings. Having understood the structures, distribution, and functions of the mind, we can go on to understand many other interesting things that we have always wanted to know. The concept that remains to be clarified here is that of the subconscious mind. This would be, within the framework of Freud's first model, the sum of the preconscious and the unconscious. It is the part of the mind that is not superficial and exposed as the conscious is. Join us in future talks to continue unraveling concepts and those topics about which you have always been interested in knowing but you did not have the opportunity to read or have someone explain them to you in a simple way. It has been a pleasure accompanying you. Now let's go back to the clinic routines. Which one of you has a session with the neuroinducer in 30 minutes?